Welcome back to the Investing Markets and Money podcast. And today we're talking to Dr. Mike Jones, who is Managing Director of Impact Minerals. And he's over from Australia. And we thought we'd just take the opportunity to catch up with him and his project while he's in the UK. So welcome to the program.
Thanks very much, Stuart. It's always great to be here.
So Impact Minerals, obviously you're over in London at the moment, talking to interested parties about the company. Can you just give us a quick summary of the business?
Yes, certainly. So Impact Minerals, we are developing a quite niche project. It's in High Purity Alumina, and we have a project about 500 kilometres east of Perth in Western Australia. And we hope to bring that into production over the next couple of years by a variety of means and methods. And so we are out here just telling the story as far and as wide as possible. And it's been, we always get a very good reception because of the unique nature of the project and some of the ideas and things that we're throwing at it.
And what does that get used for those who are not familiar with it?
Yes, certainly. As I mentioned, it's a niche product, but is used in a wide variety of industries in technology, batteries and semiconductors. And so some of the use cases are artificial sapphire. So sapphire is actually aluminium oxide. It's the same thing. It's alumina. And for the ladies in the audience, it's the blue sapphire and rubies, which is the same composition, have little impurities in them, so chrome, magnesium and iron, and that's what gives them their beautiful colours. But when you remove those impurities, it's actually very translucent, and so artificial sapphire glass is a big market. So people's fancy watch faces, your smartphone screens are all made of artificial sapphire. Fighter jet windows are all made of sapphire because it's basically scratch proof. So alumina in its form of corundum or sapphire is one of the second or third hardest substances known to mankind, natural, and so very scratch resistant. It's also used in the semiconductor industry to help make semiconductors or the particles that go into them. So semiconductors nowadays, a lot of silicon carbide and gallium based particles in there, and they need to be polished and prepared to a very fine degree. And so we put HPA into slurries, a fluidized material, and we polish those particles, get polished in there. It's a very high specificity business. And it's also used for thermal dissipation. So if you see a picture of a semiconductor, it's often got a little square top to it. That's actually a piece of HPA in there which helps suppress the heat build-up. And so you can imagine with data centers, etc., that's a very burgeoning area of use. And the other big one is lithium-ion batteries in particular, but other battery architectures. So because of this thermal inertness and also it's chemically inert, it's used to separate the anode and the cathode in these batteries because obviously that's a chemical reaction which causes heat. So the last thing you want is heat build-up in a battery, and so the HPA allows the chemistry to flow through but not the heat. And so when we see pictures of the Tesla batteries catching on fire, or your little electric scooters catching on fire, that's because the separator is peeled away from the edge of the battery and the chemistry gets out of control, the heat gets out of control, and we get thermal runaway. So that's just a handful of those uses. But so as I say, not many people know about it, but the demand's growing at about 20% per annum for the product at the moment.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you what the demand was like, but it seems, I mean, obviously picking up a lot more than was 10 years ago, given technical innovation.
That's right. And look, high purity anything is quite difficult to make.
Yeah.
And so as technology and processes have evolved over that 10 years, it's kind of the classic situation whereby, we can make it a bit more easily now. Now we find more uses for it. So, and that's certainly happening. Every year there seem to be new uses coming out for HPA or some of its precursors.
And what distinguishes your main project here, which is Lake Hope? What makes it different from other projects out there?
Yeah, we could probably put the overview on the top of it. Is that we think that a combination of the project and technology that we have to process the material will allow us to be one of, if not the lowest cost producer of HPA globally, and potentially by a significant margin. And that is a huge step in industrial minerals in particular. You need some sort of edge in order to survive in industrial minerals, and that for us will be at very low cost of production. And that's driven by the unique nature of the deposit that we have. So Lake Hope is a dry salt lake in Western Australia. And in the top 2 meters is a particular mineral which can be converted in a relatively straightforward fashion to alumina. And as a result of that, it's very cheap to dig up and truck it to the processing plant. That's where things get a bit more difficult. And as a result of that, it just leads, everything that we're doing is leading to low operating costs as we move forward.
Okay, and I mean, we've had quite a lot of Canadian miners on the program before, but not so many Australian miners. What sort of process do you have to go through to bring this all into production? What sort of regulatory and, dare I say it, red tape obstacles are there in Australia?
It's generally getting harder to work anywhere, in the world, but certainly Western Australia in general, is still one of the best places to get a mine permitted, and it's a tier 1 jurisdiction, et cetera, and the process is relatively straightforward and well known and well trodden. The two key things nowadays are obviously environmental permits, and then also your discussions and negotiations with the local native title groups. In our case, that's the Naju community, who are based in Norseman, which is a significant mining town, about 150 kilometres further inland from where our project is. So if you can get through those two hurdles, then the rest of the process, hesitate to say, is relatively straightforward. And we do have a mining lease application in place now over Lake Hope, and we're in discussions with the Naju group about the benefits to their community. And we've done first pass heritage surveys and environmental surveys, and so far everything is good to go. So we're very pleased with the progress so far.
And this is, as you say, this is a lake. So we were talking about water in the lake itself. So we're not talking about digging holes or anything like that. So presumably the capex for something like this is nothing like digging a gold mine, for example.
No, that's exactly right. So the lake is dry most of the year. So if you've ever flown over, Australia, there's just salt lakes, kind of everywhere. And the way that they form, these sort of little depressions, and in our case, a lot of the sulfur that's in the lake is brought in from rain and from the ocean. So we have sulfur from the ocean, and it mixes with the elements and metals that come out of the weathered rocks around the sides of the lake, and it basically sits there and stews. It's a very acidic environment, pH of 3, and so if you go in there in your boots for any length of time, it actually eats into your clothing. So dry for most of the year, and we're basically just digging up the first metre or two of that material, and we will mine for 3 months of the year, put it in a stockpile by the side of the lake, and then truck it off site. So as a result, you're quite right, on site the capex minimal, no permanent buildings, no requirement for beneficiation, no crushing or grinding, so the material's naturally micron sized minerals, and so it's very reactive. We won't need power, we won't need permanent power, we won't need water or anything like that. So in terms of the long-term environmental liability, it's about as low as you can get. It's really a small quarrying operation. That's the key to it.
I see. And are you involved in the processing as well, and getting the final product out into the market?
That's where all the fun starts.
Yeah.
So it's a great story about finding the resource and what it looks like. I think I'm quoted as saying, we have a reserve now over the deposit. So we've got something in the order of $10 billion plus US dollars worth of HPA in the ground, and we drilled that out for 250,000 Australian dollars. And
wow.
That's literally about the best return on the drill program you've ever seen.
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
And we do it with a rubber mallet and a push tube. If you haven't seen some of my presentations, so it's a little plastic, cylinder, hammer it in with a mallet, and then the hard part's actually getting this stuff out of the tube, and then send off for assay. So the drill holes to drill out this 30-40 year mine life. I think we drilled about a total of about 700 meters, and so at that end of things, it's the numbers are quite extraordinary, and people sort of look at us going, that's almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
But in high purity anything, the trick is always in the process at the back end, and so our plan is that we'll truck it off site, we'll go to Perth, and we can get that material mined and trucked to Perth for probably 2%, 3% of OPEX. per tonne, which is ridiculous. And then the process is where all the action starts, and so that's where we've been focusing our efforts over the last couple of years.
And what does it look like in terms of from this stage where you are at the moment to actually making it a commercially productive mine?
Yep. So where we sit at the moment is this year we've achieved two things, two major boxes ticked. The first one was planned, which was the pre-feasibility study. And that pre-feasibility study was based on the Lake Hope deposit and our own patented process at the back end. That process is very straightforward. It's two stages, where the first stage we leach it in an alkaline leach, and that produces a valuable byproduct of potash. And Australia imports all of its potash. It's very high quality potash. It's SOP, and very significant credit for each tonne of HPA that we produce. The back half then is an acidic leach. That's been quite well used, and a number of small producers around the world are using that technology. It is hydrochloric acid. There are always issues using hydrochloric acid, but the process works and is very economic. So that was what the pre-feas was based around. I can talk about the numbers briefly.
Yeah, that would be great.
So the NPV post-tax of the project is 1.2 billion Australian dollars. So it's $1 billion project, and that's based on a benchmark production rate of 10,000 tonnes per annum. And the key number in there is that the capex to build all of that is about 250 million Australian dollars, including contingencies. So that's a pretty good capital efficiency. And then the operating cost, I'm jumping between Australian and American dollars because just the way the product is sold in American dollars, is about $5,800 per tonne of HPA. Now it's currently selling for the standard 99.99% pure material at sort of over $20,000 a tonne, so some significant margins there. But with the potash byproduct credit, we can drop that operating cost down to about $4,500 a tonne. And as we currently understand it, that'll be the lowest cost producer globally by a significant margin. So that was the big news. Those numbers were very similar to the scoping study that we put out 18 months previous, and so that was very satisfying that there wasn't a big cost blowout or anything like that in our estimates a couple of years ago. So that was great. But during the year, at the start of the year, one of our competitors in the industry went into administration, and that's because they did the thing that no junior explorer should do, which is they took on a convertible note with no revenue. And of course, everything took longer than planned. They drew down the note, and eventually the note holder said no more, and they went under. So when we looked at their technology, which had been promoting, it was actually a very elegant process to produce HPA, and it's a solvent extraction process, and it uses a chemical feedstock rather than a natural feedstock. But amazingly enough, that chemical feedstock is aluminium sulfate, and that's actually what our minerals are in the lake.
Oh, right.
It's aluminium sulfate.
Right.
And so there was a natural bolt-on then for our process. And that's what we're looking at now, is how to integrate those. And so we acquired the assets, the HPA technology from the administrator. That was a very interesting few months going through that process. And we ended up doing a joint bid, which was successful with the original founders of the company, who'd left in disgust at all the shenanigans that had been going on there, and two American investment firms. And so we were the founding shareholders. So we're the largest shareholder in this group now that has the technology. And so out of the blue, then we have a new back end. Okay. Yeah. Now, all I can say simply is that back end will be a hell of a lot cheaper and simpler than our current back end. And so right now we're trying to integrate it. So we're going to get an astonishing set of numbers, I believe, in next year once we've worked through how the two may integrate.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah. Very, very lucky.
Yeah, that's right. It was a very stressful few months. So we were trying to raise capital. We were trying to finish the feasibility study. We were going through some intense negotiations for the administration process, which was very interesting. Just a quick anecdote. It kind of started off as a private, a blind auction, blind charity auction. Everyone's top secret about how much you're going to, what you're going to pay for the asset, etc. And then when the administrator makes his recommendation, it becomes a public auction because then everyone knows what everyone else is bidding. And then when they have the creditors meeting, because it was quite competitive, it became like Sotheby's. So we've got one group on the phone to the US, to their investors. We've got another group who were the main bidders in and out of the room, and then we were there. It was, putting up your paddles, in through here. Anyway, long story short, we were successful, and we ended up with 50% of it. 100% would have been great, but 50% was better than nothing, as it turned out. So that's been pretty good, and it's going to be a fantastic acquisition, I think, and we can talk about that in the next question or something. Because it's been a very interesting 6 months since we took on the new assets.
Right, and I'm presuming that also means that the time to commercial production has been narrowed now.
Absolutely accelerated, yeah. And we probably saved 2 years of time, $6 million minimum in just overheads, running the place, and probably 10 million, all up.
Wow.
And we'll be in a position relatively early next year to provide material to potential clients and off-takers. So the purchase came with the following. It came with basically a fully equipped high purity analytical laboratory. And the significance of that is that in high purity anything, so high purity manganese, silica, quartz, graphite, if you're in a pilot plant mode, you need your own analytical equipment, because if you have to send out assays for fluids and solids that are in your pilot plant, and you've got to wait 2 to 8 weeks for commercial turnaround, it ain't going to happen, and that takes too long. So you'll notice that the ones that have been successful all had their own laboratories. So that was one big tick. We ended up with our own in-house laboratory. That was probably $750,000 worth of equipment in there. They were 85% through the commissioning of their pilot plant, which has the capacity for about 25 tons per annum of HPA production. As it turned out, it was going exponential in terms of time and cost to get that last 15%. That's what sent them under.
Yeah.
And we've now taken control under the subsidiary, which is called Aluminous. And the original CEO of the company is now the CEO of Aluminous, and so they're private. It's a private company as such. So they've been working very hard on commissioning this plant. It's a beautiful thing. It's been built to a high standard, and you can't help but walk around the shed, as I like to call it, in Fremantle in North Perth. And all these plastic tanks and pipes going, okay, it looks like Impact is in the HPA business. It's we're serious. And what we've found is that clients and offtake people, they'll be polite and take material off you and try and test it, but they won't take you seriously until at least you've got that pilot plant, because no one's going to change supply, on the off chance. And so we've actually avoided getting in touch with clients until now. Next year will be the key one, and we're just about to announce a research collaboration with a battery technology provider in the US, who will help us with the product specification. They'll do a lot of that work for us on our behalf, working together for then an introduction into the battery market, going forward. So that all came sort of wrapped up with the acquisition. But you mentioned time. Yeah, we've saved 2 years in time.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah,
that's really good. And can you briefly talk us through where you are in terms of the financing at the moment for the company?
So finance is always an interesting one in high purity minerals, and there's the big challenge in industrial minerals, and in particular in the niche markets, is your economies of scale in terms of scaling up your operation to be financially viable and obtaining the offsetting offtake agreements in order to finance the debt. Okay, so banks in particular very loath to lend on offtake agreements unless they're rock solid and they can see 10 years worth of funding ahead of them. And so the beauty so let me take a step back. So on the Australian Stock Exchange, there's a company called Alpha HPA. The code is A4N. People should look that up. 10 years ago, they were a small explorer like Impact and came across a new way of making HPA, and they took that on, and they've developed that now where they're now scaling up to 10,000 tonnes per annum of production. Now, to get 10,000 tonnes, you need a significant number of offtakes, and so that funding is quite difficult. But Alpha, to their credit, have got their entire debt funded by the Australian government because HPA is a critical mineral in Australia. Yeah. So they've given them $400 million to sort of dip into, even without full offtake agreements, which is a remarkable outcome for anyone who knows anything about finance in the mining industry. And so that's always a massive challenge, all right? So the other beauty of the technology that we purchased is that it is modular. So we believe that we can build plants that will be, say, 1,000 to 2,000 tonnes production per annum for a few tens of millions, as opposed to having to scale up to 10,000 tonnes in one hit and go through all this problem of financing, your big finance. So Alpha, by the time that they're in production at 10,000 tonnes, they will have spent $1 billion Australian dollars to get to that position. 600 to build the plant, and they've already sunk 300-400 million into getting to where they are now. So if I go around to people and say, well, I think we're going to be able to get to a similar scale of production for a fraction of that by the time we get to it, they'll again look at me, really strangely, and so it will be a fraction of that cost to get to that scale of production, but we'll be able to do it in stages. So, as I say, I don't know what the exact number will be, 1,000, 2,000 tonnes or something like that, for a few tens of millions, and that makes the offtake easier, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that sounds like a genius move, even if I say so myself.
No, the economics are awesome. Yeah. Conscious of time here, so basically I just wanted to also ask you about your projections for the HPA market over the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, certainly from where I'm sitting, it looks like it's going to be increasing fairly exponentially.
That's right. 20% per annum sort of compound annual growth. But all these things I've spoken about makes it difficult to make. And there are high barriers to entry that we've sort of run through. But as Warren Buffett says, once you've got the barriers, once you're over the barriers, you've got your moat. And we believe our moat is actually going to be pretty wide and pretty deep in terms of cost by the time that we get there. So the market's relatively small at the moment. Certainly in the West, it's probably 70, 80,000 tonnes per annum from various suppliers and producers, but forecast to go to 120, 130 over the next sort of 5-6 years. And because of those difficulties, there will be a bit of a tightening of supply. And Alpha HPA have done some significant in-depth research because they're so far further down the track. And they're forecasting, a few $1,000s per tonne extra, margins and stuff in the next couple of years. So hopefully our timing of getting into small-scale production will be correct at that point. But I think once the numbers that we think we have, come out into the public, it'll really shake things up in the HPA industry.
Oh, that's amazing. And also, very briefly, you also have some other projects which are not as far developed. Can you just?
That's right. Well, look, we set Impact up to be to find a world-class deposit. Now, I know we all sort of do that. Everyone kind of wants that massive discovery. But over the years, what I've learned is that you see many sort of one-mine companies, in particular non-gold companies, small copper miners, silver, lead, zinc miners, et cetera, and you notice that the market caps very rarely get sort of out of the $100 to $300 million Australian market caps. You have to merge, or something exceptional happen to sort of grow from there. And my skills are more in exploration, developing the business skills. So it's like we're always looking for the big win. And I like to quote 3 companies in Australia. So De Grey, Azure, and Chalice were all 20-year overnight success stories looking for a world-class deposit, and they all reached $1 billion market cap, and they had not turned a sod of earth.
Wow.
Okay, and Alpha HPA is the same in the HPA business. They've reached $1 billion market cap, and they've not sold more than about 10 tons of HPA, because they sell it is a great story, fantastic products, but they need the production capacity to get to that. And they're currently sitting at about 600 million because they're in the trough of development in the Lassonde curve, which I'm sure most of your viewers would know about. And that's where we are. We're in that trough of development. So our other projects that we've had always had the capacity, in my view, to deliver some world-class discoveries. So we've been rationalising the portfolio. Some of the lower ones we've sold for small amounts of cash and royalties, should anything be found on them. We've just done quite a good deal on a copper-gold project in the Lachlan Fold Belt, which is one of the big copper-gold provinces of Australia, where we're left with a 30% free carried interest in a decision to mine with another junior, and they'll be drilling there in the first quarter of next year. But we were one of the first 7 companies on the BHP Explore program, and which is it was a fantastic experience. And if there are anybody in the industry watching, you should if you've got a great copper project, you should definitely try and get on the Explore program. It was a wonderful experience, and we actually took BHP back to the future, because that project is at Broken Hill, excuse me, and we're the largest ground holder around one of the world's greatest mines, and we took them a model of for copper formation. We believe there's a giant copper deposit lurking in there somewhere, and we've got some pretty exciting news to come out of that Explore work over the next few months, and we hope to actually drill a significant target in the new year. Now, this is where people say, why are you doing that? Well, that's what we came to do in Impact, was to find $1 billion project. We've got one in the HPA, and we might have one in copper, and for a couple of drill holes it's probably worth rolling the dice, so we shall see what happens.
No, definitely worth a shot. We'll have to keep a close eye on what's happening next year. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme today, Mike. It's been really interesting.
No, thanks, Stuart. Hopefully, if anybody's got any questions, of course, they can always contact us. And keep your eye out. So we've got some unique ideas and some unique stories in Impact.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Like and subscribe to our channel for more great investing ideas. You can find us on thearmchairtrader.com, as well as on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can subscribe to our free newsletter for news, insight, and tips to help you navigate the financial markets. The content of this podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only, and does not constitute financial advice. The views and opinions expressed by guests or hosts are their own, and do not necessarily reflect those of the Armchair Trader. Investments can go up and down in value, and you may not get back the amount you originally invested. Past performance is not a reliable indicator of future results. We do not provide any personal investment, tax, or legal advice. Always do your own research or seek independent professional advice before making any financial decisions. The Armchair Trader is a media company and is not authorised or regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.